Hi, welcome to the second in a short series of videos for beginners to the Native American flute. In the first video, we talked just a little about the nature of the flute, how it works, why it's such a special instrument. In this short video, and I promise it is short, we're going to give you what you need to begin to learn to play the Native American flute. When I first started, I was at a craft show, and I walked into a booth, and the fellow said, "Hey, do you know how to play?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I can teach you in 5 minutes." I didn't believe him, but I had 5 minutes to invest, and so I let him tell me what he had to tell me, and to be honest, 7 minutes later, I bought my first Native American style flute. It is not one of these that you see behind me, it's in a different location, but that got me started. So I'm going to give you a similar 5-minute lesson. In the previous lesson, we talked about the parts of the flute, what they do. So today, in this video, we'll talk about how to manipulate your breath and the finger holes so that you can begin to play. First of all, it's important, I would say, don't blow into the flute. It's not a trumpet, it's a flute. And we breathe into it. One of the things that makes it so appealing for more spiritually minded folks is that your breath gives life to the music. You breathe into the flute. If you blow hard, it can be a sour sort of note, but if you gently breathe into it, it is a much more pleasant and mellow tune. So here then is the lesson. Primarily, keep finger holes closed. If you keep them all closed, in fact, you will make the flute's lowest possible note, sometimes called the fundamental note. This happens to be an E flat, so a fairly low flute, almost as low as a D. And if I cover all of the 6 finger holes, it is as if the flute had no holes, and the sound made is going to be based on the entire length of the flute from the foot to the splitting edge, and it will sound like this with a light breath. Now here's the interesting part. If you uncover a finger hole, and this is the magic of the 5-minute lesson. If you uncover a finger hole, let's say this one, then you should also uncover the holes underneath it. And it makes a decent tune. If I were to uncover just that hole, it won't be quite as pleasant a note, or at least not in tune or in scale with some others. And don't open them at random. You'll get sort of odd results. Instead, open them from the bottom up and then close them from the top down like this. So if I apply this to just those bottom 3 holes, I would get a half of a scale that would sound something like this. And you can do the same thing up the flute. That, however, there is an exception, and that is that the 3rd hole down is typically, at least for beginners, typically never uncovered. In fact, some flute makers go so far as to cover it up with a leather wrap so that you don't have to worry about keeping your finger closed over it. So, once again, moving from the bottom up, but keeping the ring finger closed. I'll do the entire upward scale. And then downward. And so long as you follow that one rule, that is, uncover only from the bottom up, and if you uncover a hole, have all of the other ones underneath it uncovered, with the exception of the ring finger. So, for instance, I would not normally do this. I would not normally do that. The reason is because the bottom hole is still covered, right? So if I want to uncover this note, then I want to uncover the ones underneath it as well. And it's fine. You don't have to necessarily go from the bottom up. You can start anywhere as long as you follow that rule. That squeaky note that you heard was user error, player error. And what that usually means when you hear it is that one of your other fingers has got a slight leak. If I tend to be playing this note, but if one of these upper fingers is not firmly blocking the hole, you'll get a squeaky, weird sort of effect, maybe like that. So there's a proper note for the fundamental. And here I think will be a squeaky one. Oh, very squeaky. And it's because this finger right here wasn't exactly over the hole. It had a very slight gap, and that gap simply causes it not to work. Some of the sound waves escape from that crack rather than going through the length of the flute. So with this new lesson, keep the ring finger covered, ring finger hole covered at all times. You can do that. You can uncover it later when you've got more experience. But keeping it always covered, open from the bottom up, and then close from the top down. And you can then put together simple scale songs that just go up and down the scale that sound maybe something like this, which is totally random, by the way. In that example, all I did was go up and down the scale. A couple of times I might have gone a little bit reversed order without going all the way up or all the way down, but I kept everything sequential. A little bit later on, you could skip notes, and rather than going up sequentially, you might skip things and go same notes, but I didn't play every one of them. Instead, I lifted multiple fingers at the same time. And that's how you get a basic note, or a basic tune. In the beginning, I would stick first with making the fundamental note, cover all of the holes, and breathe into the flute until you get the fundamental note that is clean and not squeaky, and it should sound something like this, at least for a deeper flute. And then I would try holding your note much longer. Take in a deep breath, and if, by the way, it squeaks, then take your fingers off, relax them a little bit, put them back over the holes with the pads of your fingers, not the tips, but with the pads of your fingers, covering the holes, and blow the fundamental note as long as you can. And once you can consistently blow that fundamental note, then try simply going up and down the scale. Don't do anything fancy. Don't try to be quick. Don't try to make a tune yet. Just play the scale, and in fact, it'll be pleasant. Once again, if you hear squeaky off notes, relax your fingers, stretch them a little bit, make sure that you're comfortably covering up the holes, and you just go up and down the scale. No particular hurry. In fact, do it slow. Of course, that time I was breathing a different note into each note that I played. You can also do one continuous one and just lift the fingers but keep the breath flowing. It would be like this. So I think for the end of lesson 1, that's your homework, is to cover up all the holes, get a good fundamental note. And then once you're comfortable with that, work up and down the scale. I wouldn't try anything more fancy for a while. Practice 5 minutes at a time, a couple of times a day, and you will quickly get that. and then tune in to the next video and we'll get just a little bit more advanced.